you learn to do a lot of things. You learn to unplug toilets very quickly. You learn to paint when you have to. You learn how to start cars. You learn how to change flat tires. You are on your own. No whining, no complaining, no boo-hooing, and no going home to mom. No. You soldier through it, and you become very independent, and I am. But that was in large part because I was a Navy wife. I love being a Navy wife. It was really fun. But boy, you become very, very independent and self-reliant, and you better know how to do things, because I had to move out of the one apartment when Bob left, and our son Bob was only, what was he, only a month old, a month or two?
No, he was a week old.
A week old, yeah. And I drove from California to Idaho because I ended up staying with my parents. They were kind enough to let me stay for probably, I stayed a little too long, who knows. And then I had to drive back and get a new apartment when Bob was finally coming home, when they extended your cruise for a month,
right.
I remember. Now, here I've got this child, this baby child, and I'm driving. And all of a sudden, I'll never forget, we got to Truckee, California, and the car overheated. And I thought, okay, well, at least we're in Truckee, so that's the good news. And I pulled into a gas station and told the guy my problem, and he said, oh, well, yeah, I can fix that, but it'll be, 2 or 3 hours. Well, I had this baby, a baby. And I said, well, I've got to go. It was hot. And so I looked across the street and there was this motel, and I said, okay, not a problem. I'll check back in a couple hours. And I went over to the motel room with his child, with his baby. And I said, can I rent a motel room for a couple, 3 hours? They said, yes, absolutely so. And it was air conditioned, thank God. And I had the food and the bottles and everything I needed to be able to take care of him. Well, the guy fixed the car, and I went to pay the motel room, and she said, honey, for what you're going through, there's no charge. Well, thank you, Lord, because I didn't have any money either. The story was Jim, our vice admiral, was always walking on the edge. And we had just built a new house, our very, very first house. Was it our house?
Yeah, we were building it.
Yeah, we were building it. And in order to save money, we had to we did the painting in the inside rather than try to save money rather than pay a painter. So every day I would go to the paint store and buy a couple, 3 gallons of paint. Now I'm doing the painting, and then you'd come home and you'd help doing the painting. But me doing the painting scared Bob half to death, because I get it done fast, but I wish you could see what it looked like. And so one morning we got in the car. It was in the summer, I guess. And we got in the car and we had a purple station wagon with purple carpeting and purple seats. And it was a great station wagon.
It was brand new.
Well, it wasn't. Well, I guess it was. And so I had the boys in the back and the paint on the floor, which is logical. It was a station wagon. Don't put the paint in the hole back there, but put it on the floor. And so son Jim, on the way home, and this was early in the morning, said, I am a weightlifter, and started lifting the gallon of paint. And sure enough, he dropped it, and the gallon of paint in the well on the purple carpet. And the first thing, because you always got to fix stuff. So the first thing I did was pull into this poor woman's driveway, and it was like 7 o'clock in the morning, so she was trying to have a cup. And I thought, well, I'll just scoop the paint out on her driveway, and she's looking out our kitchen window. I thought, I don't think that's really a very good idea. So we sloshed home, and I said to Jim, you go to your room and you lock the door and don't come out. And no matter what I say, lock the door and don't let me in, because if you let me in, I'm gonna kill you. And that's all there's. And he hightailed it up there. And so the next thing I did was call Bob at work. And I said, how's your day going? He said, it's good. I said, well, good. We've got a half a gallon of white paint in the bottom of the purple car and the purple rug. I made Jim lock himself in his room, so because if I get to him, I'm gonna kill him. I haven't figured out yet how I'm gonna do it, but he's gonna do it. So I finally got all the paint out and did all of that stuff. And I did it, he didn't do it, I did it. So I finally got up and I said, oh no, I guess I made you go up, because he wouldn't open the door. And so he came down and I said, you are in such deep trouble. And he said, I know. And I said, now, how are you gonna pay for getting this carpet cleaned? And he said, I'm only 4. I said, well, you'll figure out a way, go figure out a way to pay for it, because you're gonna have to pay for getting that carpet cleaned. He said, okay. Well, 2 days later, I get a knock at the door, and this lady with her little boy came to the door and said, okay, we're here to pick up the bike that we bought. And I said, the bike that you bought, I didn't sell a bike. She said, no, your son did. He went door to door with his bike and he sold the bike to pay for the carpet cleaning. And I said, oh dear, I think I went a little too far.
Maureen always really was, I don't know whether the word is impressed, but she was taken by the fact that I paid for my own college education. From the time our kids were small, I used to travel so much, I was gone all the time. She was the one that was at home with the kids constantly. And she always preached the dogma that you're going to pay for your own college education like your dad did.
Well, and I would say to them, there are two ways to do it. Pay your money and take your choice. Either you're going to college, period, amen, because you're capable of doing that, and I know that. But number one, you can pay for it. That means you can go and work the whole time, or you can plan for it now, which I would highly recommend, and get a scholarship and have somebody else pay for it. And to me, that's the easier way. So get upstairs and get your homework, and you bring it down and let me take a look at it. And if you spell Constitution wrong, you're gonna go back up.
The only ones that we had while we were in the Navy were Bob and Jim, the two oldest. The interesting thing is, Bob, who is the oldest, when he was in the 7th grade, I think, he was exposed to it so much. One day, all of a sudden, Maureen and I saw him reading a book about the U.S. Naval Academy. And he devoured that book. And from that point on, his goal was to go to the Naval Academy. And so everything that he did in high school was directed towards getting prepared to take the exam, pass the exam, and be chosen to go to the Naval Academy. After he graduated from the academy, he became what I wanted to become. He became a submarine officer on fast attack submarines. And he followed the Soviet boomers all over. maintaining the peace. But Bob started it, and then Jim followed. He got an appointment to the Air Force Academy just to prove that he could. And then he got an appointment to the Naval Academy, early appointment to the Naval Academy. Our second son also went to the Naval Academy. He's the one that lives here. And he stayed in for 31 years. And he ended up head of the Missile Defense Agency. He was in charge of protecting the United States from missile attack. And
He's a vice admiral.
he's a vice admiral. And he now is the head of a startup company which he started, and they are building solid fuel rocket motors for the missiles that the kinds that are knocking down the missiles that are attacking Israel today. And his son, who is our grandson, has just been accepted into Air Force pilot training. And when he graduates from Texas A&M next year, we have in our family my dad, who was Army, and then our daughter-in-law, who is married to our son that lives here. Her father went to the Naval Academy and he became a Maureen. And she graduated from the Naval Academy, our daughter-in-law. Our son graduated from the Naval Academy. My twin brother's son was in the Coast Guard.
Yeah, we've got all the branches covered.
All the branches covered. Was in the reserves. And that's when we actually have 5 children. One was a girl also who passed away at a very young age. But they were all born after we got off of active duty. We've got a daughter. She's an attorney up in the Minneapolis area. She was not in the military. Our daughter, who is the attorney up in the Twin Cities, she came before Mike. Our son, Mike, who lives in Phoenix, he's got a master's degree in computer science. And so he leads teams that develop products for our military. Now we're out of the Navy, and we've got our other children. And Mike, he was going to go to Rose-Hulman, and he was offered an ROTC scholarship. Rose-Hulman is a really high-level technical school in the state of Indiana. And but they wanted him to major in engineering. He did not want to major in engineering. He wanted to major in computer science. And so he did not take that scholarship. Let me tell you a funny story about Mike. When he was getting his master's degree in computer science, he was teaching a class in one of these big lecture halls. Maureen had a question. She was trying to merge a letter with some addresses, mail merge. She didn't know how to do that. So Reen calls the university computer science department, and she identifies herself, and she says, "Can I speak to Mike Searing, please?" And the secretary of the department said, "Yes, Mr. Searing, I'll get him for you right away." And so she goes down to this big lecture hall that he's conducting class, and
Kids.
she walks in and she whispers to him. She says, "Mike, your mom is on the phone, and she says she needs to speak to you." And Mike did not have any idea what it was. He thought maybe something was going on with me. So he dismissed class, and he hustles down, picks up the phone. "What's going on, Mom?" She said, "I got this problem. I'm trying to mail merge."
Mom, have you heard that before?
"Mom, do you know what you just did?"
I told her when at your convenience. She apparently didn't hear that.
What's the best advice I can give to younger generations? And that is, I think, give back and serve if you are able to. Find a way to give back and serve. Rena and I made the decision that we were going to make a career out of the Navy. I absolutely loved being at sea, and I loved being a naval officer. And Reen loved being a Navy wife.
I did.
Even though we had long periods of separation, she loved it. And it was meant to be.